13 years of marriage ended in a PDF. No argument, no apology, just one email with the subject line, "Let's be adults about this." In this video, I'm going to share a story not about the battlefield, but about something much closer to home. Because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought overseas. They're fought in silence, in betrayal, and in starting over when the life you built suddenly vanishes. Here's what you'll see: a carefully calculated betrayal, quiet but brutal. A soldier's quiet counterattack, not with rage, but with strategy, and a journey of healing, where justice and resilience meet. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you thought they'd never leave you, only to wake up one day and realize they already had? My name is Nathan. I'm a former staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. And this isn't just my story. It's the story of anyone who's ever been left behind halfway through a life you thought you were building together. The journey started on a scorching June afternoon in Kandahar. I was brushing dust off my old laptop when I saw the subject line, "Let's be adults about this." At first, I thought it was spam, until I opened it, and the world inside me went quiet. This is where it all began, when everything seemed to fall apart only to become the start of something no one saw coming. I was 4 months into a deployment in Kandahar when it happened. We'd just come back from patrol, dusty and drained, and I remember sitting on the edge of my bunk, checking my email like I did every night. One new message stood out, not because of who it was from, but because of the subject line, "Let's be adults about this." That was how my marriage ended. 13 years of shared birthdays, bills, and bedtime routines, all reduced to a PDF attachment. No warning, no apology, just 3 short sentences. She had filed the divorce. She had emptied our joint account. And she had moved her new boyfriend into our home in Spokane. I read it twice, closed the laptop, took a cold shower in the communal stall, got dressed for my night shift, and I said nothing to anyone. Later that night, I replied with one word: understood. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I didn't tell my buddies. Maybe that's not what most people would do, but I wasn't most people. I was a soldier, and soldiers don't react emotionally. We absorb, we assess, we adapt. You see, when you're thousands of miles from home, you can't afford to fall apart. You can't just leave your post and fly home to confront what's breaking. You carry it quietly, because your mission doesn't pause for heartbreak. That moment, that email didn't just signal the end of a marriage. It marked the beginning of a different kind of mission. Not survival, but clarity. Sometimes the loudest endings come in the quietest ways. And sometimes strength looks like silence, not because you're weak, but because you're choosing to stay in control when everything else is falling apart. And yet, looking back now, I realize that email, it didn't come out of nowhere. There were signs, subtle ones, little changes that whispered before the world shouted. So let's rewind a bit. Looking back, the cracks were always there. They just weren't loud enough to shake the walls, at least not at first. It started with small things. Becky stopped asking how my day was, even when I called from across the world. She started working late at the dental office more often than before, started going to the gym 3 times a week, but her sneakers never looked worn. She bought new clothes, made new friends, started locking her phone. But you know what stood out the most? The silence. Not the angry kind, the hollow kind. I'd come home on leave and feel like a guest in my own house. She'd sit on the other end of the couch, scrolling through her phone while I watched reruns of shows we used to love. When I made dinner, she'd say thanks, but her eyes never left her screen. When I asked what was wrong, she said we were just in a phase. But phases usually end. This one didn't. Still, I didn't confront her. Not because I was blind, but because I believed if I stayed steady, we'd steady together. That's something many people in long relationships believe. That love can outlast distance. That time apart makes the heart grow fonder. But sometimes time apart just makes it easier to walk away. The warning signs of a broken relationship rarely show up with sirens. They come in the form of changed routines, distant eyes, and forgotten questions. If something feels off, it probably is, and your silence won't save it. Of course, I didn't act on those feelings. I'm not the type to accuse, to snoop, to rage, but I wasn't stupid either. And that's when I started doing something quiet, careful, and completely out of character. Not revenge, not spying, just preparing. I never said anything to Becky. Not when she stopped saying, "I love you" before bed. Not when she canceled dinner with my mom for the third time in a row. Not even when I found the new passcode on her phone. But I wasn't asleep. I was paying attention. And quietly, I started to prepare for what I didn't want to admit was coming. It started with small moves. I rented a storage unit on the other side of town. Inside, I placed the things that actually mattered. My grandmother had watched my mom's old silver, our marriage license, the deed to the house, one that was in my name, thanks to the VA loan, copies of my military benefits and pension paperwork. I didn't do it out of bitterness. I did it out of foresight. Then I opened a second bank account, just a quiet little account at a different credit union. Each paycheck, I redirected a small portion, not enough for her to notice, but enough for me to have a starting line if everything fell apart. I wasn't hiding. I was protecting. I remember my dad once told me, "You don't board up your windows during the hurricane. You do it when the skies are still blue." That stuck with me. And even though I still hoped I was wrong, even though a piece of me wanted to believe she'd come back to us, I knew better. One night, right before my deployment, she hugged me at the airport. Her arms were around me, but her eyes were dry. It felt like a goodbye to a coworker, not a husband heading to war. That was the moment something inside me quietly accepted the truth I might be leaving with a wedding ring. But I wouldn't be coming home with a marriage. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight louder, it's to prepare smarter. Because not every war comes with bullets. Some come with bank statements and broken trust. By the time I landed in Kandahar, I didn't know what would happen back home. But I knew I wasn't walking into it empty-handed. And good thing I didn't. Because what came next hit harder than anything I saw on the battlefield. 2 weeks after the email, I was in the mess hall eating dinner when my phone buzzed. Just a notification from our bank app. I opened it without thinking, probably a paycheck deposit or a low balance alert. But what I saw made me stop mid-bite. 88 of 500. Gone. Almost everything we had left in our joint savings. Transferred. And our checking account down to 2237. I stared at the screen for a long time. Murphy, one of the guys in my unit, looked over. "You good, man?" "Yeah," I said, setting my fork down. "Just some stuff back home." Because what was I supposed to say? That my wife had just cleaned out our life savings from 7,000 miles away. That the woman I married had waited until I was sleeping in a tent in a war zone to strip our accounts clean. That she hadn't just sent divorce papers, she had started a campaign that night. I called the bank from the satellite phone center. The woman on the line was kind, but cautious. Becky had been transferring funds for weeks, small amounts at first, then larger ones, and the big withdrawals. They started the day after I deployed. It wasn't an accident. It was a plan. I hung up the phone and stood in the hallway for a long time. Guys were walking by and then laughing, FaceTiming their kids, getting ready for a movie night. And I stood there alone in a crowd with my life back home burning down. When the ground disappears beneath you, you learn real fast who built you a parachute and who cut the cords. You can't always control how people betray you, but you can control how you land. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't make a scene, I did what I was trained to do. I started assessing the threat, and that's when Wilson, my bunkmate, and one of the few people I truly trusted, found me. He looked me in the eye and simply asked, "What's your plan?" And that was the moment it clicked. This wasn't personal anymore. This was tactical. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something colder, sharper, clearer. I pulled out my laptop, logged into our home security system, something Becky probably forgot I could still access. What I saw didn't surprise me, but it still hit harder than any bullet I'd faced overseas. There was a strange truck in the driveway, a man, not me, walking our dog, drinking from my coffee mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt. Standing in the kitchen, I had remodeled myself, tile by tile, during my last leave. And Becky, she was laughing, like everything was fine. That was it. That was the moment when everything clicked into place. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a breach. And if I'd learned anything from my years in uniform, it was this: when you're under attack, don't react, reorganize, rethink, respond with precision. So I opened a notepad and wrote 3 words at the top: Operation Take It Back. I made a list, called James, an Army buddy turned lawyer, review the VA loan terms, check recent refinance documents Becky once mentioned in passing, look into the security on my pension accounts, verify who was listed on the house deed and who had no legal right to touch it. Every task had a timestamp, every name, a possible link. This wasn't emotion anymore. This was strategy. And by Euro 500, before my shift began, I sent the first message to James: subject, need legal help, discreet and urgent. His reply came just an hour later: call me. Secure line only. When someone turns your life into a battlefield, don't come with fists. Come with a plan. Because the most dangerous man is the one who stays calm while everything burns. By the time I hung up the phone with James, I wasn't broken. I wasn't even sad. I was ready. Because now it was time to uncover the full scale of the damage. James and I met at a diner 10 miles outside of town. He slid a folder across the table like we were back on a recon mission. Inside were documents, bank statements, refinance applications, my own signature, or what looked like it. You see it, James asked, tapping the page. That's not your signature. Nate, the middle initial's wrong, and the stroke is off. My heart dropped. Becky had forged my name, took out a $330,000 refinance on our house using the equity without my knowledge. It got worse. She listed her boyfriend Jeremy as a co-applicant, and Jeremy James pulled up his record. 2 DUIs, 1 fraud conviction in 2019, a string of questionable business ties. What I thought was just a painful divorce was actually the front end of a financial ambush. The more James dug, the deeper the rot went. A man named Daniel Spencer showed up on the transaction trail, a real estate agent known for quick cash sales. Multiple payments from our refinance had gone to him, even though we hadn't listed the house. But here's where it all connected. Jeremy and Spencer had done business together before. 3 times, in fact, all involving women going through divorce or whose spouses were deployed. Each time, the house was sold below market value. Jeremy got a cut, and Spencer flipped the property. This wasn't just betrayal. This was organized. Becky wasn't just moving on. She was either a pawn or a partner. I didn't know which yet, but I knew one thing for sure: they didn't just break my heart. They tried to steal my future. Not every villain wears a mask. Some wear your hoodie, drink from your cup, and call your dog by name. But truth has a way of catching up if you have the courage to face it. We were done playing defense. James had already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Turns out, I wasn't the first soldier to come home to this kind of scam. But maybe I'd be the one to finally blow the whole thing open. I never believed in revenge. Not the screaming, breaking things kind you see in movies. What I believed in, what the Army taught me, was something else: precision, patience, and pressure applied at exactly the right moment. That morning, I drove to the bank, the same one that had processed the refinance Becky forged in my name. I sat down with the loan officer, handed over my military ID, my driver's license, and the original copy of my real signature. Then I slid across the forged document. His face went pale. "This isn't the same handwriting," he said. "I know," I replied. "And that signature let someone steal 1/3 of my home's value while I was deployed overseas." Next stop, the county clerk's office. I filed a formal contest of the refinance on the grounds of forgery. I registered a legal hold on the house. Nothing could be sold, refinanced, or transferred without my direct approval. paper by paper, form by form. I was building a wall, not with anger, but with accountability. That night, I got a text from Becky. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy says someone's asking questions. I didn't answer. The next day, "Nathan, we need to talk. If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults." Like adults. The same cold words she wrote when she ended our marriage from halfway across the world. Still, I didn't reply. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about what they had done and who else they'd done it to. Then the call came from James. "Jeremy got pulled over this morning. Driving your truck. Suspended license." They impounded the vehicle. "Good," I said. "Also, police found prescription pads in the glove box, stolen from the dental office where Becky works." That hit harder than I expected. I wanted to believe she was just lost, misled, caught up in something bigger than herself. But this was crossing a line. Sometimes the strongest move isn't to strike back. It's to set the stage, build the case, and let the truth walk in wearing handcuffs. Because justice isn't loud, it's relentless. The next morning, I met with the FBI investigator. Thompson, tired eyes, coffee-stained tie. He laid it out plainly. This happens more than you'd think. Deployed service member, spouse at home, fraud slips right through the cracks. But not this time, I said, and I meant it, because what happened next would crack the entire operation wide open. It didn't take long after that. The FBI had enough recorded conversations, forged signatures, a paper trail linking Jeremy, Becky, and Spencer in a pattern of targeted fraud. One morning, I sat in my car a block away from my own house, and I watched as federal agents marched Spencer and Jeremy out in cuffs. Jeremy looked confused. Spencer looked annoyed. Me, I just looked down at my coffee and whispered to myself, "That's for the 13 years you thought you could erase." Becky pulled up 10 minutes later. She stood on the lawn as the FBI boxed up documents, seized electronics, and taped off the front door. She didn't cry. She just stood there frozen. My phone buzzed that night. "Nathan, please, I don't understand what's happening. I never meant for it to go this far." I stared at the screen for a long time. Because here's the thing no one tells you, even when justice shows up, closure doesn't always ride in the same car. The federal case moved quickly. Spencer and Jeremy both took plea deals. They admitted to targeting military spouses, flipping homes for profit while service members were too far away to fight back. Becky, she swore she didn't know it was fraud, said Jeremy told her I was hiding money, planning to leave her with nothing, said she was scared, said she trusted the wrong person. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. In the end, she signed a settlement, full restitution of the money she took, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my pension, a written confession of the forgery, and in exchange, I didn't press charges. Why? Because closure, real closure, isn't about watching someone suffer. It's about choosing peace over dragging pain through another year of courtrooms and headlines. Justice is what the system gives you. Closure is what you give yourself. And sometimes the best revenge is not becoming like the people who tried to break you. 6 months after the email in Kandahar, the divorce was final. No fanfare, no more lawyers. Just a clean break on paper. Anyway, but a break, no matter how legal, still leaves echoes. And those echoes don't disappear until you start building something new. I didn't go back to the house, even after the case was over. Even when it was legally mine, I couldn't walk through those walls without feeling like a ghost. Too many memories, too much betrayal in the drywall, too much silence in the corners where laughter used to live. So I sold it, and with the money, I bought a cabin outside of Missoula, Montana, 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a creek out back that sings every morning. No neighbors for miles, just wind, pine, and sky. I took early retirement. 20 years in the Army was enough. I'd served my country. Now it was time to serve myself. I got to scout a German shepherd with wise eyes and a bark that scares bears. I started doing carpentry work for locals. Nothing fancy, just shelves, fences, barn doors. Things you build with your hands when you're trying to rebuild something inside yourself. Out there in the woods, with the world quiet and clean, I started to find pieces of me I didn't know were missing. Not the soldier, not the husband, just Nathan. And the funny thing is, healing didn't look like fireworks. It looked like coffee at a sunrise. It looked like Scout curled up at my feet. It looked like sawdust on my jeans and fresh eggs from the neighbor down the road. No grand epiphany, no magic moment, just quiet. Steady days, one stacked gently on top of the next, until I started feeling like a whole person again. You don't rebuild your life with big, bold moves. You rebuild it like a house, one nail, one quiet breath at a time. Sometimes I think about Becky. James said she moved back to Oregon, got a new job at a dental office, starting over, in her own way. I don't hate her anymore. I don't miss her, either. I just hope she found peace, because I finally found mine. And one day, when I wasn't expecting it, I got something that reminded me why all of this mattered. It came in the mail one crisp fall afternoon, no return address, just a simple envelope with my name, written in careful handwriting. Inside was a letter. You don't know me, but I wanted to say thank you. My husband is in the Navy. While he was deployed, someone tried to do to us what they did to you. The FBI stepped in just in time, and they told me it was your case that broke everything open. You saved our home. Thank you for not walking away. Thank you for fighting back. Signed, a wife in Fort Worth. I read it twice. Then I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a little Montana bear. It's still there. Some days, when the quiet gets too loud, or when the memories sneak in through the back door, I look at that letter, and I remember this wasn't just about me. This was about all the others. The men and women serving overseas who trusted that life back home would wait for them. The families who almost lost everything to people who saw their absence as an opportunity. The good people who still get hurt because, sometimes, even when you do everything right, someone else makes a wrong choice with your name on it. But it's also about this: you're not powerless. Even when it feels like everything's been taken from you, your voice, your home, your marriage, you still have a choice to stand up, to get clear, to respond not with rage, but with resolve. You never know who's watching your fight, and you never know whose life might be better because you refuse to go down quietly. That's why I told this story. Not to get sympathy, not to paint myself as a hero, but to remind someone that when the world tries to take everything, you still get to decide what comes next. Thank you for listening. If you've ever been broken, betrayed, or left behind, I hope this reminded you that you're not alone. And if you know someone who needs to hear that too, send this their way, because stories don't just heal the one who tells them. They reach the ones still fighting. Until next time, stay steady, stay strong, and keep building your quiet life, one honest day at a time.